Today I'll be talking about the EFF. It might look like I'm excited to talk about the EFF. No, I'm excited to talk about my opinions on the EFF because they're controversial. I mean, they could be good for the country, but there's certain things that they've done and I was like, whoa, it's the way you act, it's the way you act. And it's not the white supremacist talking points that a lot of people have. They're like, oh my God, they're too radical. Oh my God, they said kill the Boer. They're not really gonna kill white people, like, trust me, they're not. But I'm just looking at some of the press. But let's get into their road to victory. Is it road to victory? This is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see my face, if you can see my laptop. Hello, this is what it looks like. And the first thing that really stuck out to me here was that they said 2024 is our 1994. Let's just look at that alone. What is 1994 to South Africans? Was it the year that Brenda Fassie became a huge star? My black president. Was it the year we ate chocolate for the first time? Like, what was happening in 1994? 1994, as you all know, South Africa had its first freely democratic elections. Those were elections that Black people, colored people, Indian people, white people were all able to participate in, and it was the first time that people of color could just vote for anyone that they wanted to vote for, right? Even when we're looking at 1994, that was the year that Nelson Mandela was elected as president of South Africa, and it renewed hope in the South African dream for all. And so maybe that's what they mean. So they mean that maybe 2024 is the year that they renew hope for South Africans. 2024 is now the year that they think they will emancipate us from the white supremacist and white monopoly capitalist rule that our country is shackled by. I don't know how you challenge capitalism when you have Rolex watches, but okay. And I'm not saying that socialist people should be poor. I'm just saying, like, exorbitant performances of wealth aren't always the most Marxist and Leninist things, but what do I know? Anywho, so it starts with a quote from Julius Malema saying that our loyalty is to our people. We account only to the poor and no one else. That's why there's poor white South Africans that also support the EFF. Let us go, fighters, forward towards the liberation of the masses of our people. Let us not tire. Let us not retreat. Victory is certain. We will govern South Africa and deliver economic freedom in our lifetime. In our lifetime. I think that's very important because when we talk about politics and we talk about like the hope for South Africa and for Africa, we're always like, oh, I don't know if this is gonna happen in my lifetime. I think it might happen for my grandkids or my great grandkids. But sometimes I'm like, I actually want to live the soft life now. Like, I don't want to be waiting for 100 years. You know, like, I feel like that's something that always holds us back as African people, because if you keep thinking about, I guess I'll see you next lifetime, what? No hard feelings. Then you're just gonna tire at the end. It's like, oh, it's not something that I'm ever gonna realize for myself. And I think selfishly, you should know that freedom and the lack of necropolitical war in South Africa is something that you will see in your lifetime. Maybe how Kudile, not know. Mara, maybe no, maybe next year. There's a first time for everything. And as the ANC's fave always said, what did he say? It seems impossible until it is done. Because Mandela had some nice quotes. Let's not lie. Nelly M, he kind of ate with some of those quotes. Anywho, so what is the Economic Freedom Fighters? So the EFF is an economic emancipation movement that strives for economic freedom for all South Africans, Africans, and people around the world, allowing everyone to participate meaningfully in the economy through a decent job, a living income, not a minimum income, a living income, access to a decent education, healthcare, and food security. I think these are very important things to address because I think economic emancipation, or the lack of economic emancipation and sovereignty in Africa, is one of the things that really shackles us to the West, to things like the World Bank and the IMF, right? And those are the forces in our world that really define the way that we move about our economies, and more so for other sub-Saharan African countries than South Africa itself, because other sub-Saharan African countries were like they were affected by the structural adjustment programs of the IMF in the 1980s. And the structural adjustment programs basically said to African countries that if we give you loans as the IMF, you guys have to rearrange your economy like so that you can be able to pay back these loans. And so they were told that, you know, your spending for education has to be less than 20%. Your spending for infrastructure has to be this and this much. Your allocation of money towards this and that has to decrease so that you can pay us back this loan. And that affected education, obviously. And education in the sub-Saharan African parts of the continent was really, really good before these IMF loans. But because now allocation had to go down, then everything else deteriorated because teachers weren't being paid well. You know, schools weren't being renovated or refurbished. You know, textbooks weren't being allocated as would have been fit. So that's why we don't hear about universities like Makerere being good anymore, like this university in Uganda. And yet at that time it was like, oh my God, you're going to Uganda, you're going to Tanzania, you're going to all these African countries. Anywho, so I admire their mission. And so when and where was the EFF formed? It was formed on the 26th and the 27th of July 2013 in Uncle Tom's Hall in Soweto. They ate with that. You know, anything that has Soweto, personally as a Sowetan, it's gonna eat. In Soweto, next to the Hector Peterson Memorial Square in the Gauteng province, in the province of gold, in the city of gold too, because Soweto is in the city of gold, it's in Johannesburg. So they had, so was this on the 26th of July, activists from all corners of South Africa gathered in the National Assembly on what is to be done, and resolved to form the EFF as an economic emancipation movement which will contest political power through elections and all other revolutionary means necessary. I think this corroborates the claim that, I think this whole statement corroborates the claim that the EFF is good as a defense because they contest political power. You know, they use all other revolutionary means necessary. They're always there to defend the honor of African people. They're always there to, I think, break down and abolish colonial systems. My wonder is, how are they going to build after revolution, after dissent, after, you know, this contesting, right? And maybe they'll get into the meat of that throughout this, you know, this road to victory. So how is the EFF going to fight for economic emancipation? So expropriation of South Africa's land without compensation for equal redistribution and use. Let's actually look at the definition of expropriation of land without compensation, because I found out that I don't really understand it as much as I thought I understood it. And so basically the expropriation of land, as we know, is kind of the redistribution of land in an equitable way, right? In a way where black people aren't owning only 4% of the agricultural land in the country. And let me look at the meaning. What does this mean? So the meaning here is that, let's go down. So expropriation means taking possession of private property by a government, usually for public use, with compensation to the owner. But the EFF is saying without compensation, right? So without compensation means that even if they take the land, they're not going to compensate the people that they're taking the land from. Because what do you need to be compensated for after, you know, facilitating land inflation, land manipulation, and also like gaining so many billions and trillions of rands from having the land for 300 years. And then the equal redistribution and use means the purpose of expropriation is to achieve a more equitable distribution of this land. So if black people are 80% of the population, then they're going to have to get 80% of the land. Does this make sense? Cool. Now let's go back to what we were reading. Oh, they want to nationalize mines. So the second thing the EFF wants to do is nationalize mines, banks, and other strategic sectors of the economy without compensation. Again, they want to build state and government capacity, which will lead to the abolishment of tenders. Ooh. Chicken tenders? I'm joking. We know which tenders they're talking about. The tenders that are busy funding these Instagram baddies who are putting rands and rands in Louis Vuitton. But have you seen that video? I was broke watching that video, and I was like, the tenders that have also led Joburg water to now not be as sanitary as it used to be. Anywho, so then free quality education, healthcare, houses, and sanitation, very, very important. Massive protected industrial development to create millions of sustainable jobs, including the introduction of minimum wages in order to close the wage gap between the rich and the poor, close the apartheid wage gap, and promote rapid career paths for Africans in the workplace. When they talk about Africans, are they talking about black people? Is like African and black used interchangeably? Because I'm wondering if when they're saying Africans, they're also including Africans from other African countries, which I'm okay with. By the way, I'm not xenophobic. I have no problem with immigration when it is done in a way that is conducive for the country, and that is also conducive for the people that are coming to the country. Because you know what happens with a lot of these white companies that only hire, foreign nationals? They underpay the foreign nationals because they know that they can take advantage of them. That's why personally I feel like the way that xenophobia is marketed is a way that only protects white people. It only protects white monopoly capitalists, and it shields us from seeing what they're actually doing, this divide and conquer thing that they're doing, this whole thing of making other people be susceptible to exploitation while other people are susceptible to unemployment. It's just a lose-lose situation for black people on both sides, while white people just gain from us not seeing what they're doing. Anywho, so they also want open, accountable, corrupt-free governance and society without fear of victimization by state agencies. That's cool. I don't think that South Africans are particularly scared of speaking out against the government. I have no idea, actually. Let me not say that. Never mind. I saw a video of that guy on Twitter who was like, oh my god, I think they're going to kill me. They're probably going to assassinate me for what I'm about to say. And he just proceeded to say what he wanted to say. And I was like, did you not just say that they were going to kill you? You look like a handsome old man. Like, why would you want them to kill you? Just shut up. Shut up. I'm joking. Get that. Anywho. So what are the principles of the EFF? They want elected and collective leadership. They want powers of the National People's Assembly, democratic centralism. What is that? So that means the practice of democratic consultation and engagements before decisions are adopted. And once adopted, they are binding on all members and structures of the organization. So basically, I think they want more public participation within the decisions that the EFF would make should they become the ruling party of South Africa. They also want mandates, accountability, and reporting. That is very important. With presidents that have built fireplaces under their swimming pools for their mermaids, with presidents that have hidden $40 million under their couch pillows or whatever, with people who are funding Switzerland boarding education for their children while South African schools, some of them don't even have water, some of them don't even have labs, some of them don't even have the necessary resources to even learn 200 kids in one class. Atrocious. So yeah, they want constructive criticism and self-criticism. I think they want that in theory, but the EFF is not known for taking criticism well. So I don't know. I think they could work on that. Like, they could really work on that. And then they want discipline and hard work. Selflessness, loyalty to the organization, and love for one another. My love is your love, and your love is my love. What? Does the EFF contest elections? Yes, they do. Since the formation, they participated or contested the 2014, 2019 national general elections and the 2016-2021 local government elections. In the national elections of 2014, they received 1.1 million votes, and then in 2019, 1.8 million votes, which is really good, securing 44 members of parliament. That's really, really good. And then in the 2021 local government elections, they received 1.2 million votes, which is 10.8% of the total. Wow. That's only how many years after their formation? Like 8 years after their formation. I think they've worked hard. They have really, really worked hard. So I'm just gonna skip a lot of the things that I think are unnecessary. So the achievements, I think we know the achievements of the EFF. William Nicol. Why am I saying William Nicol Avenue? Guys, William Nicol Shopping Center, one of my favorites. Just one of my favorites. Why am I seeing? I saw. We tabled a motion in the city of Johannesburg to rename William Nicol Drive to honor anti-apartheid activist Winnie Madikizela Mandela. That's cool. Let me tell you something. I hate how all the places in the suburbs, or most of the places in the suburbs, are just named after white people. And then in like the thingy, in the township, there's white people and black people, like Bram Fisher. Who's that other guy, Joe Slovo? I used to think that Joe Slovo was black. But then like even the poor areas, like all the poor areas are named after black people, all the rich areas are named after white people. What does that tell you? Anyway, what are the EFFs? What are the EFF's views on Pan-Africanism and the integration of the African continent? This is a controversial one. Cool. The principal challenge of confronting Africa is the lingering impact of colonization and neo-colonization phenomena that primarily benefit Western nations. These countries exploit Africa's abundant natural, cultural, and human resources while the continent grapples with poverty, inequality, unemployment, and conflict. To combat and ultimately overcome colonization and neo-colonialism, unity among the dispossessed people of Africa is imperative. While the fight for economic freedom is indeed a national struggle, aiming to attain state power in South Africa, expropriate land without compensation, nationalize key sectors of the economy, and establish a competent state, it is also part of a broader Pan-African struggle. The expansive battle seeks to liberate the entire continent from the remnants of colonial dominion and its enduring legacy. The EFF believes that the African continent must pursue massive development of the African economy and move towards borderless Africa because the current borders are not economically viable. So I have some thoughts on this. So clearly the EFF believes in the Casablanca Bloc, right? When the African Union was established, it was originally known as the Organization of African Union, right? There were two schools of thought. There was the Casablanca Bloc and the Monrovia Bloc. So the Casablanca Bloc believed that, you know, all of us should just be one Africa. We need to dismantle all of these borders. We need to have one currency. We don't need all these factions and these colonially drawn borders because they have divided us in a way that we've never been divided before, right? And then the Monrovia Bloc was like, okay, cool. You guys want economic freedom and intra-African trade, Pan-African refineries. You want cultural exchange between African people. We can do all that while keeping these borders, because for a lot of African countries that did try to dissolve the borders, it didn't work out. There were two West African countries that dissolved their borders. If I'm not mistaken, it was Mali and Guinea. If I'm not mistaken, I can be wrong. And after a year, they re-established the borders. Why? Because it just wasn't working. And I think, for me, at first I used to lean towards the Casablanca Bloc in saying that, you know, that's cool, I want all of that. We can dissolve the African borders. But I think for South Africa, that wouldn't be feasible. One thing we'd have to deal with in South Africa is our own internalized xenophobia. And so there's a lot of like mental decolonization that we need to do, because there's even xenophobia in other African countries, if we are being honest, right? So there's xenophobia in countries, like when I went to Ethiopia, I hated being in Ethiopia because people were treating me like so badly. There's a lot of things that we need to do within our countries, like solving things like tribalism and ethno-nationalism, right? That doesn't mean that we shouldn't have tribes or ethnic groups anymore, because I do believe in having ethnic groups. I think that is a central part of our nationalities and our identities, because even within being South African, I identify as, you know, Mxhosa or as Mosotho. And even when I find Mosotho wako Lesotho, kere, le nna ke Mosotho, mara ke Mosotho wako South Africa. So I think it's just gonna take time. I think when, I don't know, it's almost like the case of, does the egg come first or the chicken come first, right? So do we dismantle the borders so that we can get to a point where we decolonize our minds and everything, or do we decolonize our minds first and then dismantle the borders? So I'm on the fence. I like the Casablanca block in theory. I don't know how it would work practically, and even with the Monrovia block, like, it's not working. We've been trying. We have SADC. There's still xenophobia towards Zimbabwe, and there's still a lot of things happening in Zimbabwe. I'm like, oh my god. West Africa has ECOWAS. East Africa has EC. Is it EC? EC. EAC. North Africa, what does North Africa have? Because I've never heard of North Africa say, oh, we have an alliance between Egypt, Algeria, Morocco, Tunisia, and Libya. I don't think I've ever heard that. But anywho, I've just gotten to the meat of what the EFF does and who the EFF is. And I think the EFF, to be honest, I know about all the other parties. I've been reading articles on other parties, and a lot of them haven't released their manifestos. I don't think this was the EFF's manifesto. I think it was their route to victory. I think the EFF is looking like the most promising, even though you heard me say I do have a lot of criticisms for them, because how are you going to participate in a democracy if you don't have criticisms for your government? It's okay to have criticisms. No one's gonna be perfect, right? Because I think that's one mistake that South Africans make, or EFF supporters make. When you criticize the EFF, they think that you're being a white supremacist. No. You have to look at everything through a critical lens. You can't just take everything as it is, because then that's going to lead to the mistake that we made in 1994. And indeed, 2024 again might be our 1994 in a bad way. But if we criticize them in a good way, it could be like 1994, in reinstilling hope, in allowing Black people to enter the economic force, to have jobs, to find quality education in every which corner that they can. So yeah, that was the EFF. Thank you.